idea for the president to be as involved in Hurricane Harvey as he seems to be, especially on Twitter. Jerry Acuff joins us this morning to talk about the president and his reaction to Hurricane Harvey and some of the political perils that he is bound to fall into. Good morning.
Good morning, Wendy. How are you?
I'm doing all right, Jerry. Thanks for joining us this morning and to talk about this real test of Donald Trump as president. Because, yes, we are in a crisis as a country, even though it's happening in East Texas. All eyes are on Houston right now. And because of what happened with 2005 with Katrina and Bush's apologies being really ripped to shreds, it makes you wonder, how is this going to go for President Trump?
Well, actually, I think it probably, he's handling it better than Bush did, but I think a lot of the reason is because they've learned from the mistakes that Bush made. That's one thing. But, the truth is, Wendy, he's got three big problems here. One is there's so many people that just don't like him, that they're always going to be looking for any, sort of chink in the armor, anything that didn't go perfect. The second thing is he's not that likable. He's a me guy, not a we guy. And, so if you believe in his politics, if you believe, that he's Mr. I can get anything done because I'm a billionaire businessman, then, you like him no matter what he does, in spite of his tweets and his faux pas and, his human frailties. But he's just not a person who, and he doesn't really care to be liked. I mean, if you read his book, The Art of the Deal, in the first 72 pages, it tells you everything you need to know about him. He doesn't care that people don't like him, and if they don't like him and they say something bad, he's ready to fight. The third issue, which is probably the biggest one, is the storm itself is so multifactorial, and the recovery from it is so multifactorial and complex that there'll always be things that didn't go well, that anybody who wants to point out something negative, almost everybody that is not a Trump supporter says the big issue is he doesn't show any empathy. He didn't meet it with any survivors. And then, if you're on the other side, you're saying, well, gee, he would have created all this disruption. So people are going to find things to point at, and including, whether, Melania wore high heels or not. So he's got a tough row to hoe. And the bigger problem he has in Bush is that Bush was actually likable. It was hard not to like Bush. You could not like his politics, but he seemed like a pretty decent person. Trump seems like a person who's dominated by his ego, and there are a lot of people that not only don't like that, are turned off by that, and they look for anything to make this guy look bad.
Is that not to his credit, though, when you look at this in terms of the two presidents side by side? Yes, George W. is one of those charismatic, very likable, very genuine sorts of people, regardless of all his mistakes he makes and blunders. I mean, he's had some serious blunders, but you can't help but like that guy. Whereas Trump, you can't help but not like the guy, even though you see him doing the work he said he was going to do. And it's really hard to not at least go, well, he's doing what he said he was going to do, in terms of what he's pushing for. Not that he's getting the support from the party right now. I think if he was getting support from his party, then maybe more would get done. Let's talk infrastructure. That's something that someone brought up earlier with me, is Trump could use Texas right now to go ahead and start rebuilding America's infrastructure. And that's something that the other side wouldn't really be able to say, heck no, we're not going to do that, because right now it's an emergency that we do that.
Yeah, and I think those are absolutely excellent points. But just before you leave the other point, the truth is that in matters of great importance, in running the country's great importance, when my wife had breast cancer, I really didn't care whether the surgeon was likable or not. What I cared about was he capable of doing his job?
Right.
And, and was he really, really good at it? And so I think it's the same thing here. But in terms of infrastructure, I think if I were him, I would be pivoting on that quickly. The other thing I would be doing is I would be looking to do things that I write about in my book called unexpected, thoughtful acts. When we do things that are unexpected and thoughtful, people have a tendency to think, to begin to change their view of you. So, for example, all of those people that took their boats down there, that drove their cars from hundreds of miles away with boats so they could rescue people, I would find some way to capture their names and do something nice for them. Give them $1,000 tax break, send them $1,000. I'd do something because all of those people aided in the efforts and lessened the work that the government had to do, whether it's the federal government or the state government. But I'd be looking for things like that to do over and above, the things that are expected by the government. Oftentimes we just get in our head, this is what I'm supposed to do, and sometimes we ought to think outside of what
the job
to do and say, hey, what would be really, really nice?
Jerry Acuff is a speaker, a trainer. He's the author of several relationship and leadership books. And we're talking about what the White House, or what we should be expecting from the White House during a national disaster such as Hurricane Harvey. And, we're talking about how Trump has responded so far. Now, Trump has a way of doing that unexpected thing. And I don't know if he can do it in the terms that you are providing, Jerry, but I hope he would do something like that. Would it mean more if Trump was to do something like prize or praise those who have gone above and beyond their own means to be there in Texas and bring boats in to help rescue people, rather than getting on a boat himself and standing at the helm of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody who's got, a lot of common sense knows that those are photo opportunities, and those are, manufactured opportunities to make them look good. We judge people on, not only their actions, but the intent of their actions.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do things that are thoughtful, that are unexpected, people think differently about you. And they think, actually, no matter how callous your exterior may seem, that you actually do have a heart. And so I think he'd be wise to think about some things that he could do. Now, the more lavish, for lack of a better term, that his praise can be, and by the way, it wouldn't have to be lavish, it'd have to be genuine,
right,
for all of the things that people have done. The other thing, if I were him, I would talk about how this crisis exhibits that America is not the divided America that the media and some of the politicians on both sides want you to believe. The reality is, if you watch the coverage of this, and it's extensive, what you see is, neighbor helping neighbor. And it doesn't matter whether they're African American, whether they're Hispanic, whether they're Caucasian,
right,
whether they're Asian American. You're getting in a boat and you're going to get somebody.
right.
I don't care whether they're old or young. And so to me, at our core, Americans are really, really good people. And so much of the way people would like to portray American society, now, I'm not saying there ain't a lot wrong with America, because there is. The biggest thing wrong with America, I think, is that we don't practice understanding. We vilify people who don't think the same way we do. Listen, my daughter and I think very differently about a lot of things, but I don't have to believe her or like what she believes to love her. I have to understand her and understand that why is she different.
Or even to like her. There are times when you don't agree on maybe a topic or a specific political interest or whatever, but you can still like a person. They still may be funny or charismatic or genuine or whatever it is about them that you could actually like. There's always, I think, something you can like about somebody else.
Oh, I always say that everybody you meet is somebody's mother, brother, father, sister, aunt, and uncle. Somebody loves them, by gosh, so can I.
There you go.
So I just got to find out what it is about them that is lovable. The other thing, too, I always look at people who have a different point of view than I do as a learning opportunity. Because fundamentally, if we don't check our beliefs, if we don't check the things that we've learned, then, we're doomed to be wrong a lot.
Well, and I think that's how people get radicalized, too. It's like you get to a point where it's like you don't see anything but your own vision, and then you can't see anything but your own vision because you're so surrounded by it.
I know I tell people all the time, there's universal truths in life. One is when you give, you get. That's a universal truth. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're a giver, you're going to get directly in relation and probably disproportionately to what you give, whether that's your financial resources or whether it's your time. The other one is the mind doesn't work unless it's open. And it doesn't matter what you're talking about. If you don't have an open mind, your mind is not going to be able to function the way it ought to function. And what happens with these radicalized situations is the mind is permanently closed. It's locked in the closed position, and it's oftentimes locked in a position like these idiots that came to Charlottesville. It's locked in the closed position in a way that is destructive. And what we need to do is to spend a heck of a lot more time as a society focusing on self-awareness and understanding. Really be aware of who you are, what you believe, and why you believe it, and constantly test it and make sure that you are practicing understanding, listening to other people's point of view because they didn't grow up like you did.
How can we translate this to what President Trump could be doing as far as a reaction from the White House in Houston right now and in East Texas? And then I've got to let you go.
Well, I think the biggest thing he's got to do is to just understand, the two things. One is the devastation that individuals are facing. I mean, if you go into Texas today and your home is underwater, just imagine what all of that entails. And what happens is we have a tendency to think of it in terms of you got to rebuild your house. In many cases, these are, change of any kind, and certainly of this magnitude, is such an emotional thing.
Oh, yeah.
And oftentimes what leaders miss is they miss the emotion of change. So if he could understand that emotion, and if he could express publicly how he understands that emotion and how frustrating, challenging, depressing it must be to have to go through that situation, and not just say we're going to be with you. We're going to be with you with whatever challenge that you have, whether it's rebuilding your house, whether it's rethinking your life, whether it's figuring out whether you ought to move to Phoenix or not. I don't really care. We understand that this is a gigantic issue which has a very long shelf life, and we're going to be with you. And then I think the other thing is what he does need to do, he does need to go down and actually go someplace where there actually has been, destruction and people have had, horrible things as a result of this, and actually speak to him so that he can better understand what those emotions are. I watched an interview on TV last night, and this retired guy said, this is the second time it's happened in 9 years, we're out of here. And so that's just one emotion. He's making a decision to leave. Other people will make a decision to stay.
Right.
But all of them are emotions, and they're raw, and they're at their height right now. And the better he can understand that, the better he can relate to all those people, and the more genuine and authentic he'll seem.
Jerry Acuff, thanks for joining us. Before I let you go, what of the several relationship and leadership books, if you could pick one and be assured that the president would read it, which of your books would you like him to read?
Well, I wish he'd read The Relationship Edge in Business, which is the key to strategic influence, because the truth is, the problem we have in America is that we only naturally relate to about 25% of the people that we meet. About 75% of the people we don't naturally relate to, but yet some of those people are really, really important to us, and that's exactly his situation. And my book is about how do you go about relating to people that you don't naturally relate to, and then how do you maintain those relationships, and then as importantly, how do you leverage them? How do you take the relationships that you have that are really good and make sure that you're getting benefit from it and the person that you are relating to is getting benefit from it? So if he read that book, I don't know that it would change him, but it's changed an awful lot of people because it helps us figure out how do we build a network of people that works for us when we need it to work. And this is a situation where all of us need a network that works for us.
All right, so where can he get his hands on it?
Well, he can Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Audible. It's on Audible.
Excellent.
Heck, if he'd send me an email, I'd send him a signed copy.
There you go, a signed copy from Jerry himself. Jerry, thank you for joining us this morning, and I appreciate your take on this. And I do hope, we do every now and then during the Apprentice, we did see that side of Donald Trump. And I don't know if it was because it was written in, but I don't think so. You tend to think that maybe there is that heart in there that does come out now and then. Maybe we'll see it. I'm hoping so.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you so much. Take good care.